Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Pete Bickford. I'm your host. This is the ComicBase Livestream, and this is a special Down in the Labs, completely rougher than ever seen before live version of the live stream, as you can probably see by our getting started late version today. What I wanted to talk about today, as much as I possibly can, is some of the stuff we've been working on behind the scenes that is not quite ready to be shown in public, but pretty darn close. And when it is, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's like I say, it's all behind the scenes stuff, and I just wanted to kind of talk about and kind of wrap it up. Sorry for getting started late today. We're always pride ourselves on getting started bang on time, but one of the things that went wrong right before showtime is our demo computer just decided it just did not want to talk to our display switcher. So that's something we'll be investigating after all the rest of this one. But anyway, before we get going, I want to say hi to the folks who are here. Appreciate you all. First of all, thanks to our moderator, Mr. Greg Hecht. Out here from New Jersey. Rob Weinberg is out here from Toledo. Oro Viejo joining us. And by the way, thank you to Oro and Steve Dazinger and Alan DeCamp and all the guys who were up late last night along with us, testing out some new version stuff that we put out there. It's been fun. But anyway, welcome from Minneapolis, Mike Beam. Says hello from Vancouver, Washington, and let's see here, Tim Kilbreth from Winnebago, Illinois. That's pretty cool. You upstate, the downstate? I don't know that part of the state. Anyway, Tyler T, welcome from Albany, New York. And Chris Praysall, welcome. And I hope I got, it looks like, oh, hey, Ed, welcome from Canada. And I think hopefully we got everything going on. Okay. So anyway, so what the heck have we been up to lately? So if you guys have been following along, you might have noticed that the last couple weeks of ComicBase builds, if you're on the interim build channel, if you're not on the interim build channel, it's sort of like life is just normal. But if you've been doing the interim builds, you might have noticed that we have been more chaotic than usual. Lots of weird, futzy little things have been going, just ever so slightly squirrely. Some things that, you're used to, looking one way or behaving one way, the program maybe, or just a little different, and so forth. And what we're doing basically is just a massive effort to make ComicBase faster. The number one thing that you can ever do in software to make people happier, just in terms of just all the attributes you could ever give a software program, the one you can always count on making people happy is if you can make just the thing fast. So in little ways and big, for the last several weeks, we've been working on taking apart the core routines of ComicBase, everything from alphabetization algorithms to how it sorts titles to just every little thing about it, and say, look, is there some way we can wring just a little bit of speed out of this stuff? And one thing that happened last week, especially going into this week, is we managed to take some of these little improvements and connect them all together, and so it actually amounts to things that you guys can all see. So it started out, we had some of our editorial folks, well, I'll let Mark give his own news, but Mark was off on vacation, and so last week there was no live stream because I was filling in for some of the editorial duties, and that was a good excuse for me to tie together a lot of the threads that are involved with handling corrections and new data submissions from all of y'all. Obviously, one of the secret sauce of making everything we do happen is we do have an editorial staff. We have a person who just does nothing but handling auction data. We have all sorts of things like that. We have people scan and index and all the books every week as part of what we bring to you. But obviously, a huge part of what we bring to you is data that you folks submit, because you guys are going to encounter comic books we will never see. Those 1 in a million convention editions, those strange things from afar. We have a user who does nothing but index Portuguese comic series for reasons that, God bless you, I'm glad that you're doing it, but man, we don't have that kind of ability ourselves. So that is awesome, and we get that, we get those submissions from you guys. They come in an absolute flood, and it's everything from additions to data we've already put in there to things we maybe got a little bit wrong. They solicited the letter was going to be this guy on this book, but when we finally looked at it, it was a different guy. You had a variant cover labeled slightly differently. Whatever the thing is. When you guys send that stuff in there along with, and again, we appreciate the hell of this, when you send in pictures and other data like that, we have to aggregate this all together and put that into the weekly update that you guys all get every week. And one of the things that I had to do last week is deal with, I think it was over 13,000 submissions in the course of an average week. That's just normal life out here. So anything we can do to make that process faster saves us, it saves us time, it saves us our sanity, frankly. But it just allows us to keep up with things as we're going. So I actually managed to take the core correction code. Now, this is code that at some point I will do a full-on behind the scenes and show you what all this looks like from our end. But when we're processing essentially our ginormous editorial inbox, I actually managed to make it so that when we're dealing with someone who's been like just absolutely, we have different ratings for different people who submit things. I mean, some people, when you submit data, are known to be very good on one area. Some people are known to be very good on another area. Some people, but some people are rock solid. When Mark Waid sends us data on Superman comics, we accept it damn near without question, and so forth. But anyway, depending on how we're going here, we have different things we can do to accept or reject or alter corrections as they come in. Now, we obviously can go through them field by field, but if, let's say, for instance, someone's been going through a title and filling in cover dates or street dates, and we know that they're doing pretty well, we actually have a command in the program called Satanize. Every time I mention it, the spell checker always wants to say, "Did you mean sanitize?" No, we meant Satanize. It's actually a button in the program, and it comes from a joke around the office, which says, if we don't know the data on a given issue, and you are providing it, yes, we prefer that it be provided by the most credible source on the planet. But if we have no data at all on it, and you're filling in data, we would take that data from Lord Satan himself. That was the joke, at least. It's not quite true, but it's close. So you need a much higher standard of credibility to be allowed to replace data that we've already put in the database. But if you're coming in and we don't have any data at all, well, the first guy in there, as long as you're not a known lunatic, generally our standard of accepting your data is quite a bit lower. Known lunatics, please don't take this as license to try to pull things, because you get added to the blacklist pretty quickly. But anyway, so for instance, let's say there's someone who's been very trustworthy in the past, and and we just know that they're just making a project of going in and filling in street dates. Well, so we can actually sit there, highlight all 600 submissions that they've put in the whole thing, hit Satanize in our little control console, and it goes there and says, okay, what are you filling in that we have blanks and you have something new, and of the different fields, it says, oh yeah, we didn't have street date and you're filling in street date, and so it takes that correction if we've hit that button. Well, just to give you an idea, just return to the idea of speed again, when we were filling in Satanize on, say, a comic correction, our correction console has something like 80 fields in it that we're looking at any given moment, because we have to show the new and the old versions of the comic entry, and we highlight in red anything that's different and so forth. Just showing that dialogue, coming in from the whole thing, takes 300-400 milliseconds. It's the better part of half a second just to bring the dialogue up, even if it's going to say, oh yeah, it's just that one field that's different, and we're going to take it because we already said we're going to take it, and now just save that to the database, give the guy one correction point, and repeat the process, rinse, lather, repeat. We managed to take that process, if we are doing that sort of data, we could do about 2 per second if we were just really cranking on them. We got that up to 15 per second. And similar, things we were able to do apply to all sorts of other areas of the correction game. And the way we got there is by piling up lots and lots of computer science. I mean, we were throwing every trick in the book we have at the problem. And this is stuff that, again, is going to bubble up to things you see, but we got to see it in the corrections starting last week in its full form, and it was glorious. We basically, you can only, if you got to actually look at and review corrections, you can only do that as fast as a human can take in the data. I mean, there's no making that much faster than we're doing. But as far as all the little futsy bits that take half a second here, a second there, and so forth, we managed to cut those down by like 80-some%. And so that is going to make our editors a lot more effective. Well, that's great for them, you say, but what about me? As you would obviously, I would say as well. Well, if you look at ComicBase and say, like, what are the things in ComicBase that can be legitimately slow? And let me see if I can actually bring up my computer over here, and let's see if this pops on screen. All right, so here's just my computer right now. And if I wanted to do something that was legitimately slow, I could do a couple of things. I could go to a title with stupid numbers of comics in it. So let's go with Commando, which is a title from DC Thompson. It runs weekly, but they publish like 3 issues per week. And so as a result, when I hit go here, it's going to load up. What is that? 5,806 rows. Now, you'll notice that wasn't that slow. That was slightly over a second to bring up the list, and I can now go here and scroll down the list and see all the stuff in there. We did some stuff in previous versions that absolutely revolutionized this. It used to be if I tried to show you 5,800 things in ComicBase prior to like version 2022 or so, you'd like hang the program hard for about 8 seconds, and then it would finally go, okay, here you go, and then you'd be back in business. But all right, so if I can't choke the program by pulling up a title with 5,800 items in, how do I choke the program? Well, our favorite way of choking the program when we're testing this sort of thing is we go up under here and we go to File Tools. I bring that out to the right screen. You guys gotta forgive me on this one. Unfortunately, I'm working with a 2-screen system because the demo computer is not happening today. Anyway, so if you go under File Tools, this is, by the way, if you're watching this and you've never gone under File Tools, there's a lot of interesting stuff under here. One that's in particular interesting is a command called Rebuild Lists. Now, what that does is it lets you go through the various things in ComicBase that are essentially computed lists and recalculate them and so forth. So if I were to click off series information, it would go and recalculate all the alphabetized names of series and make sure that we've knocked all those sort of stuff together. If I click off list of owned series, that's going to go through and for every series in the database say, hey, has this guy got any comic books listed in the issues fields? And if so, then it updates that flag. You see that flag if you ever go browse titles and click list only issues in stock. But if you ever feel like that got out of whack, you can click over here and it'll recompute that. Now, the first 2 options on this thing, this first one on my demo computer even takes maybe 5 seconds. The second one, recomputing the list of owned series, takes maybe 2 seconds. This is not a great way. I mean, it's a big operation, but it can do it very, very quickly. Where the fun starts is down at the third one here, item information. Now, what that one does is it goes through every issue in the entire database, and depending on what you've got loaded up, if you have newspapers in there, there's over 5 million issues in the database. I mean, there's 1.3 million comics, there's 337,000 magazines, there's something like 40,000 books, and 3.5 million newspapers listed in the database. Don't ask me how I know those numbers to some exactitude, because I've been time testing these ones for a couple weeks. Anyway, what it does for all those issues is it goes through all the fields and it performs a number of calculations. It says, for instance, let's go ahead and make sure that the total of all the graded prices times their quantity is that field is updated. Same thing goes for the graded values and the graded costs. So all those aggregate fields that get used on your reports, and make sure those are updated. It validates that all the dates are properly formatted. One trick you could do to kind of try to mess up the program is you can switch your database over to, say, well, it used to be you could do this. I mean, you can't do it anymore, but let's say you had switched your data over to, say, English formatting for date, where they would use the format month, year, day, month, year. So if Christmas, for instance, in England, you would say is 25/12. You wouldn't say it's 12/25 like you would in America. But you could take those things that were valid in one country, flip over your country in ComicBase over to a different country, and then suddenly a lot of dates would be invalid the way we used to store them. These days, it's harder to do, but let's say you took some old data in that was stored not in these international formats. it would have to make sure that we had those dates translated into a valid format. So it goes through every date in the program and make sure that it's set up properly and formatted properly, and there's no weird junk in the date fields and so forth. It calculates just tons and tons of stuff, and then when it's all done with that, it also scrubs through every note, every issue, every creator, and it does things like saying, all right, for the notes, do you have a note that says first appearance of this character, and does it also say 1:, this character? If so, it knows that the 1: is redundant, and it gets rid of the redundant note. It cleans up standard typos and things like that. And then for creators, it will also go through every field, every artist, writer, letterer, inker, and so forth, for every one of the, I believe it's something in excess of 5 million creator credits in the comic database, and say, okay, well, Art Adams typically sizes Arthur Adams. So every time we see an Art Adams, make sure we go and transfer that to Arthur Adams so it gets all indexed properly. And we have lists of some thousands of thousands. That's a number I don't remember, because we had a big effort to clean these up a couple of years ago, where we came up with a matching table for every creator we'd ever heard of and every way that we'd ever seen their name either typically misspelled or that they'd alternately written their name over the years. So for instance, you might see Art Germ, you might see Stanley Lau, you might see Stanley Art Germ Lau. They're all the same guy. And so we decided, what's the official name for the guy, which I believe is Stanley parenthesis Art Germ Lau. And every time you type one of the others, it just magically becomes the right one. And that way, when you're doing a search for art germ covers to bring to the shop or something to get signed, you get all the list. You don't just get all the ones that sign the way that he happened to sign on that particular cover. Anyway, so as you might imagine, this is just a stupid amount of work. I mean, it's absolutely crazy how involved and tweaky and tedious it is. There's things like if you're going through the notes and it says something like fall 1992 or summer 19 or autumn 1992, that it will standardize which one of those it means, and that it will standardize how the date is handled according to that. It will check for, did you have a specific date in the cover date field, but you also said circa 1992, in which case the circa is obviously an earlier note, which you can drop now because you've got the real date there, and so forth. Anyway, crazy amounts of stuff in there, which I have spent more hours than I ever really want to bore you all to death with talking about, going through this one and talking about how do we just make this fast. And starting out with base timings, which I ran on my computer, and your mileage may vary on this one, we managed to make this alarmingly faster. I'm not going to throw the number out right now because I do want to be able to tie this to a bow and put this into the release channel for everybody on the whole thing. But and it will also depend on your computer. One bit of fun that we had earlier on today is as we were going around talking about some of the speed ups, trying out everybody's rig in the chat essentially, and say, well, okay, it ran for this much on mine, ran for this much on those, and I found out that there are guys who have both much worse computers than mine, and also computers that make me think I need to go to Newegg right this minute and buy a new computer, because my God, your computer's fast. Anyway, but on average, I'm going to say we hit approximately a speed up of 3 to 4 times where we were beforehand. So in other words, something that would take 12 minutes beforehand is now taking about 3 minutes, or 3.5 minutes. We managed to take it so that updates, which used to take sometimes 15 minutes, if you were loading in all the stuff, like if you're starting out with like no newspapers and you were loading them all in, we can now do that load in something like 5.5 minutes from blank on a whole content update and so forth. Another thing that, and I haven't gone into this one with the other guys in the chat so forth, but the next time you guys download an update, and please do hold off for a day or so before, unless you're in the interim channel, but hold off for a day or so re-downloading the whole thing. But by the time the next update hits this week, when you go to download it, if you're using the latest software, you're gonna be shocked, I think, by how fast it goes, because we just really beat the hell out of, all right, how do we make it so that we can just, we can't make it download any faster. That's reliant on your computer's connection. So, I mean, if you want to download faster, get a faster internet connection. But how do we make it so that now we download the file? How do we make it so we pound that into ComicBase faster? So you guys, if you've ever watched an update, are probably very used to that thing where it says like, loading magazines, and it goes by, counts by, groups of 10,000. You go to comic books and you might have noticed that it counts in groups of 5,000 until it hits the 1.3 million. Actually, I think it's 1,350,000 mark is where you'll see the current thing go, and you'll see it was ticking away. About every second, it would load another 5,000 rows. That's pretty good. 5,000 is not bad. Next time you watch this thing, you'll notice that in the same tick, it's loading 25,000 at the same time. We really managed to pull some crazy stuff to make that happen, and we think you're going to dig it. Anyway, so other things, going back to our thing on screen here, is the thing that is the slowest thing we could possibly do in ComicBase. Wait here, before you get to that one, let me talk about the list of contributors, storylines, and notes. This one, if you were to update this one, updates the indexes. So when you say I want to find, and you start typing, like you just type M, if you're putting in a writer, and it will offer Mark Waid or Mark Miller or whatever else. But the index that we build, which is based on how popular, how often a given person gets cited as part of that index. But we literally review all the creator notes throughout the entire program, and we build that that's quick search list. That one, typically that was a pretty bad rebuild. That would be like a 10-minute job, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, depending how fast your machine was. This one is now about a 2-minute job. And if you guys care about the computer science behind this one, there is everything from cached hash tables to you name it. It is nuts how much, just like I say, computer science we're throwing at this one right now to make that happen. Anyway, but the final one, and the one that's the most fun for me, is the pictures list, which this is one that we just put into the interim channel last night. I've been working on it for about a week, and we just put it out there. This one is the worst thing that you can do in ComicBase. It's the longest running thing. If we just want to flatten your computer, this is the one to do it with. Because what this thing does is it goes out to all 5 million items in the database, and it says, all right, let's search their disk. Have they got a picture for this? And if they do, let's open up the picture, make sure it's valid, and look at its dimensions, and then store the dimensions in the database. Now, why do we need to do this? Why do we want to do this? Because you might have noticed that whenever you go to a title, like we just went to Commando right now, it loads up the pictures pretty quickly, right? I mean, there it goes. But it can load them up even quicker if it knows all the picture information ahead of time. And it powers the screensaver, and every time I go and I'm clicking on a picture over here and I want to say, hey, is there a bigger one that we can get from the server that needs to know the actual information you've got? All that stuff just works that little bit faster. So, I mean, you can see as fast as I can click here, I'm actually, if we slow down what I'm actually doing here, when I click on number 10 here, it's loading up the stored information on issue number 10. It's sitting there and it's saying, okay, according to the database, we think that I have a, let's say a 400 by 500 picture of Commando number 10. It then, when I click on it, then, if I click on the picture itself, goes out there, talks to our server, says, I have a 400 by 500 version of Commando number 10. Do you have a bigger version of Commando number 10? If so, downloads that bigger version, opens that version instead of the version that was on my disk, having saved it to the disk in place, and also updated my database so that the next time I go and I ask, have I got a bigger version of Commando number 10? It says, well, no, actually my current version is now, 900 pixels by 650 pixels, whatever the real story is on that one. So this is an incredible amount of stuff that gets done, and it gets done in the blink of an eye. But it's an even smaller blink of the eye if you have a current information on all your picture specs. And then the final thing that's interesting about it, when you say I want to rebuild my pictures, is it will actually now flush out any pictures that maybe you had a problem on your disk, maybe there's a problem with the download, maybe somehow we just got a hold of a bum picture, like someone was uploading it to us and it only got halfway there, whatever the thing was. If you somehow got a bad picture onto the whole thing, and worse yet, somehow managed to download it, it will actually find all those pictures and say, yeah, these pictures, out of the 1.1 million pictures in ComicBase, these, however many pictures over here are no good. Would you like me to delete them because they're garbage, and so forth, and we can flush those out. Anyway, so it used to be this was the task where if we wanted to just punish your computer, punish your processor, and so forth, that was the choice we would use to make your computer go slow. And we actually say right in the name of what you're rebuilding over here, we say, do you want to rebuild pictures files slow? And we meant the slow. On my computer, under the old code, basically, if I were to tick all 5 things in this list and say rebuild pictures, and this is on a modern computer, it's a 12th generation i9 processor. It's 4 or 5 years old. It's not the fastest thing that can be bought today, but it's not bad. I've got SSDs for my C and D drives. They're NVMe's. They're, again, a couple generations back, but they're not bad. This would be like a 2.5 hour process for me. Now, drove me a little crazy because, it's not that I'm competitive. I'm just, I'm a geek. But one of the guys in the chat was talking about, his much cooler rig than mine. He can do it in 1 hour and 45. And so I'm thinking, let's see if we can improve on that time. So anyway, I was really excited. Showed this one off last night of what the rebuild looks like for everything and the whole thing. And I managed to take my 2.5 hour rebuild of all these things and using, again, every trick in the book. I mean, this is everything I know how to do to make this stuff faster. But we actually managed to make this all those operations run in my record was 33 minutes 48 seconds, and I felt really, really good about this until the guy with the much nicer computer than mine went and said, I just ran it and it ran and it was good, and it's like 11 minutes and 42 seconds or something like that. It was like, you're kidding me. I gotta buy another machine. Now, in my defense, he was running off of the pictures that all you guys get and thumbnails and things like that, which are going to be slightly faster to load. I'm running off of our master picture library. So I'm running off of the largest versions of every ComicBase picture I have ever seen. So your mileage may vary on this one, and it's possible that my computer's not quite as creaky as you're making me feel right now. But the idea that I went from 2.5 hours down to 33 minutes, and that he went from 1 hour 45, he was the record holder, from 1 hour 45 down to basically 11 minutes. I think it was 10 minutes 48. But we got anyway, this is pointing to some really seriously good stuff in terms of making ComicBase faster. Now, Grant, these are the stunts. These are artificial time tests. These are not things you do every day. Honestly, I rebuild pictures like 3 times a year, and I do it just because I can. A lot of normal people will rebuild their picture list never. But for what it's worth, we rebuild the item information. That happens every single time we push an update. Every time you guys download an update, you do a version of that as you're integrating the whole thing. But yeah, everything we're doing every week is about to get a lot faster for all y'all, and that's kind of like the long and the short of what that is. Anyway, so I'm going to be showing this off for real quite shortly. It's like I say, it's not quite ready for public release right now, but I do want to make a public announcement to say that we are getting ready for our next major version of ComicBase. We're pulling into that cycle again. Just to give you an idea of how we build versions. So we've been on an annual major release cycle for ever. Basically, it's a couple of years we've been turning technological corners where we couldn't put out a major version that year, and so there'd be like a Rev 2 of the previous one where we update it, but not as hugely because we had something much bigger going on behind the scenes. But usually, what we do is we do one major version of ComicBase every year, and it features all the spectacular stuff that we've been working on. This year is a little bit different because you might have noticed that the build number on the current version of ComicBase, so let me go under Help and About ComicBase here for a second. Switch back over to the PC. So the build number of the current version is 25.6.3.3819. If you were to go Help About ComicBase on your version, if you have a version that's even like a month old or something, you're probably on a different digit for the the build number. So we have been pounding the living daylights out of the code base. I mean, every time we do a compile, it increments the build number, and that's what forms that stuff. So we have done essentially 3,800, in 20 versions of ComicBase since we did the first release of ComicBase 2025, and this is easily double the usual number that you would do for the entire course of building a release, which is to say that we do a lot of changes during the course of the year, but we've done about twice as many this year. And the reason for that is because you're basically on the verge of getting next year's version early, because when we put out the next version out there, it's going to be pretty darn close to what you guys see when we announce that the next version is out there in its full glory. Now, there are some other smaller features that are still slated to come along and everything. I'm going to save those as surprises for now, but the major difference, just that whole core speed up, which is really at the heart of this release on the ComicBase version of things, that one is just about baked in at this point. So I think you're really going to enjoy that one. You'll still see some other things that come along. There'll be some additional polish on the whole thing. One thing that's coming along right now is we're really trying to get rid of ever seeing a not responding message in ComicBase. Let me talk a little bit about what that is. So if you're ever using ComicBase, let me get full screen on this one. ComicBase is the biggest database of comic books going, and it's heavy, like real software, and it wants to beat up your machine pretty good in the course of using it. I mean, when you bought a powerful machine, or you bought a machine that wasn't just a toy, this is what you bought the program for, is to run a serious piece of software, and this is it. I mean, this is the furthest thing from a web browser you're ever going to run on your computer, probably, as far as like how much work it's actually doing. So anyway, with that said, Windows, a number of years ago, the folks over in Redmond, I think this happened right around Windows 7, might have been a little bit earlier, they had a little problem on their hands. Is that computers probably about a tenth as fast as they are today, but people were calling them up all the time and say, hey, I just did a big heavy thing on my computer. I just asked it to insert 1 million records or 100,000 records or whatever the thing is, and it just hung. It's locked up. I can't do anything. Right? I asked it to delete 500 files. And it just sits there, and so it's obviously it's broken. And so because it was hung, I decided to just turn it off, which that actually does cause problems on your computer whenever you just freak out and hit the reset button or just force quit or do things like that. That's actually when you do cause trouble. So the folks over at Microsoft learned in no short, no doubt about it, that that they had to make sure that the user interface stayed alive, even if your computer was deadly busy. Because ComicBase, again, 5 million records in the whole thing, we have the ability to flatten most people's computers should we put it to the test. It's not uncommon for us, as we're downloading, say, the new versions of 3.5 million newspapers, for it to say, I am not responding right now because I'm busy. Now, it shows the busy cursor and things like that, but that's not enough for most people. What Microsoft had done to get themselves out of trouble on that thing is they decided they put what's called an overlay. They basically take your window and they put a little graphic over the top of it, which is 50% visibility. It makes it look like your window's kind of dimmed down the back, and it says not responding. It's actually like a graphic they're sticking on top of your current window. And that's charming, because it gets Microsoft off the hook. It's so what happens is it says, oh, it's not Windows that's the problem right now. It's not my computer. It's obviously whatever program I'm running right now is doing something wrong, and so it's not responding. And then they call whoever's running the program. Now, that's fair enough, I guess, as far as it goes. And it mostly keeps people from just pulling the power on their computer and destroying their copy of Windows. So Microsoft was happy about that little plan. But the makers of, say, database programs, less happy because, we're saying, hi, we're going to be doing something that's busy for a while. And it used to be, it would just sit there and say, it's going to be busy for a while. It wouldn't say not responding. And as soon as they started putting this overlay that says not responding, they made our programs look like we just crashed. And so it became quite a bit of a problem. Well, things have developed over the years. Now, a lot of you guys, maybe know this, maybe you don't know this, but your computer is not just one computer anymore. It's like if you actually count the number of processors on your computer, there's a bunch of them now. You've got your graphics card is actually a computer inside your computer. Your computer itself has more than one core, more than one processor going on and doing things at the same time. They're all worked into the same piece of silicon, but like back in the 1980s, if you had a CPU that ran at 2 gigahertz or 1 gigahertz or whatever the thing was, it was one computer bipping around like that, trying to load up stuff from RAM and process it and do stuff like that. Only occasionally processing, passing over control to things like I/O controllers and memory, memory drivers and things like that. But mostly it was that one little processor just buzzing around as fast as that clock speed said, and it could only do as much work as that, however many bips per second that was the speed of your computer. Now, that has been true for a while. They started having dual core processors and then finally, 4-core and so forth. And so, for instance, my several-year-old computer right now is a 12900K. That's the Intel number of my processor, which means it's a 12th generation 9 series. They used to call, if you guys are wondering what's a Pentium, they had the 286, the 386, the 486, and then they called it Pentium. That was the 586. They never did a 680 or 780 or 886. But anyway, eventually they came up with different ways to designate what their stuff does. But my personal computer right now has a number of physical cores, and each of those is capable of running multiple threads. There's performance threads, there's power efficiency threads. It's crazy how much stuff is going on a modern processor to try to get work done at the same time. Now, with that said, if you were to go over to your task manager, and everyone, if you have never gone into your task manager, man, get used to this sucker, because this will tell you what's actually going on your machine. Let me see if I can pull this up in a meaningful way. So if you go down to your start menu and just type TASK, it'll offer to pull up a thing called Task Manager, and that looks a bit like this. So here's what's going on my machine right now. Unfortunately, I don't have the magnifier up here. I can't make this particularly, more performant than it is just the moment, because again, demo machine out of whack. But even when you're sitting there saying, like, I'm just running StreamYard right now, I got a web browser and I got ComicBase open, right? So I got like 2 things open. Nah, you don't have 2 things open. On a given machine, you probably have about 150 things open, because these are all the background processes that are going on. These are, there's so much stuff running on your computer, you can't freaking believe it until you open up. The task manager will tell you the truth of what's really going on. One of the things it'll also let you do is it'll let you look at your what's happening with your CPU, with your memory, your disk, and your network. And if you click on those, you can actually sort by what's using up most of your CPU. So for the moment right now, I'm streaming on StreamYard through the Brave browser. And right now my computer is basically kind of chilling out and doing almost nothing, with taking 3% of Brave's attention. Got a couple other utilities open. They're, occupying 1 and 2%, but my computer is actually kind of having an easy time of it right now. It's not working particularly hard. You will see times when your machine is absolutely hosed up and unresponsive, where one of these things, it could be your CPU, it could be your disk, it's not generally your memory, but usually your CPU or your disk is running at 100%, which means it's running as fast as it knows how to run. And nothing is going to happen on your computer until that thing is no longer at 100%. So The one we're concerned with right now, typically, if I'm trying to make something go faster, and in this case, we were talking about how to make ComicBase go faster, is we're talking about like, well, okay, ComicBase right now is using, right now, it's got a window open and I'm not doing anything with it. It's running using 0.1% of my computer's processing power. Let's say I go in the background here and I click between a couple of titles and, go and I pull up my task manager again. So now I made, there we are, 0.1%. So ComicBase exerting very little load to get that stuff done. Now, if I were to kick off one of these rebuilds or is download a container update, things like that, you might see that number kick up typically to, 5-10%. I mean, a very small number. And you say, well, why so little? Shouldn't it use more of the processor if it can? And the answer is what's really showing there when you're saying that it's running at, 5%, 8%, whatever the answer is it's saying, okay, your particular processor, in my case, has 24 threads available to it right now, 24 processing threads. How many of them are you using and are actively used by ComicBase? And the answer is usually 1 or 2. So sometimes there's an interface thread, and then there'd be maybe a background thread that's talking to the database. But that's why out of 24, you're going to see a number that's like 10% for how busy it is, even if ComicBase is running about as busy as it knew how to be. And that's actually pretty typical of most programs. With the exception of some very specialized software like Photoshop or video encoding software or compression utilities, most programs on your computer are only going to run on 1, possibly 2 of your computer's threads, because making them run on more than that is insanely difficult. It requires coordination between a lot of computer resources that, they can go away, they can get, sidetracked by other things, they can come in at different times that's very inconvenient for you. It's the equivalent of working by yourself, in which case you know how much work you can do at a given time, and saying, and now I've given you a staff of 8. Now, if you guys have ever been managers, you might know that having a staff of 8 could, in theory, make some things faster, right? So if I need to, take a dining room and set the tables on everyone in the dining room, I can say, all right, all you guys, grab some dishes from the back there are your tables, pick your block, and you all go and set the dining room, and it could all go very quickly, much more quickly than you could, say, set 100 banquet tables by yourself, right? But there's a lot of other things where if I gave 8 people the job, they'd still be waiting on me for directions, or I couldn't, until they gave me some results of what was going on, we couldn't proceed further. And so even though there's 8 people sitting around ready to get work done, because you're waiting on the main thread, the controller of the whole thing, you're not really that effective, because everyone's really just kind of waiting on the main thing. Well, with computers, typically, and remember, we go back to that whole not responding thing, you're typically waiting on the user, because the user is in charge of the whole thing, and he's going to say, look, I want you to do this thing right now. I get very upset if you go away for any length of time and you don't tell me what you're doing. Certainly, if it's more than about half a second, Microsoft will put up that not responding window on there and dare people to shut down the computer on you. That's one problem. But then another thing is that so much of what you'd want to do isn't easily segmentable into these things where you could use some, the multiple processors, the multiple threads that your computer has available to it in an efficient way to get the job done. So one thing that we've done, and we've actually handled this in 2 different ways. So one of the techniques we did to speed up every darn thing under the sun, a lot of it is just going through there and saying, are we doing every little thing that's a core behavior? Like, when we have to, come up with the alphabetization for a title, when we come up with a way to strip commas out of things and so forth, are we doing this as fast as anybody on the planet knows how to do it? I mean, is there a slightly better way to save a few microseconds? And we're literally fighting for microseconds, not milliseconds, microseconds on some of these things. But if it's something that, it saves you 10 microseconds and you call it 500,000 times during the course of an operation, well, guess what? That suddenly starts becoming seconds. Anyway, we did a lot of work over the last few weeks, making sure the core stuff was very, very efficient. But then what we started on the next level up is where we started saying, all right, how do we batch up some of this work, not just so you can say like, hey, you database, I need you to go through and retrieve all the records that are new from this update that are brand new comic titles that were never in the thing beforehand. That's an operation that we would do beforehand. You got the user interface thread. That's the guy in charge is telling the worker thread, which is the database thing, hey, you go get that stuff, bring it back to me, and when you're done with that, then we'll go on. We'll tell you how to do the next thing. So that stuff's still going on. But we managed to go and take it a further level and say, hey, every once in a while, and this is one of the things that took that rebuilding pictures from 2.5 hours to 33 minutes. Every once in a while, there's an opportunity to say, hey, I've got 24 processor threads here, 16 of which are the high performance versions. I'm going to use half of those guys. So I'm going to take 8 of those processor threads, and I need them to scour the disk all as a team. You guys all split up the work, right? And then go and report each of you your work back to Central, and then give it to me. And that way we actually can, it's like setting the tables in the ballroom. We actually can do the work pretty much 8 times faster than we could do it beforehand. It's like one guy saying, hey, you go set all the tables and get back to me. If you can tell 8 guys to get back to you, every once in a while you can do that efficiently, and you can really make the thing smoke. When that happens, you'll see that your processor, that your CPU thread for ComicBase or something else, it goes from being 10% busy to being like 60% busy. Now, I don't want to be 100% busy, because that would mean you have nothing left to do anything else on your computer and you'd be waiting for me. That's rude. I mean, we could go a little faster if we were ready to really push it. And honestly, there are things that we're doing behind the scenes when we are, say, preparing pictures for distribution, that we're doing just for our own work, that we don't, do, that you guys aren't doing yourselves. There's a time and a place where it says, like, no, go as fast as is humanly possible to go. I don't care if the computer is able to do anything else, but I want you to be as fast as possible, which is, I was talking about on one of the previous live streams, how we managed to make it so we took the process of bundling up the quick start pictures to go and compress those 1.1 million pictures that go into the different file sizes that we use for 4Ks and Blu-rays and quick downloads and all those different form factors. We're dealing with just millions upon millions of compressed picture files. We took that process from about 2.5 days to run it from start to finish on a new set, and we got it down to about 2 hours. And that was, again, using all the tricks in the book, but also going there and say, yeah, level this computer, absolutely smoke it to death. I don't care if it can blink, rather than do that. Now, that's not normally the way you want to write software, because it's impressive if you're hot rodding it, but it's kind of like the same reason that you don't want to drive a hot rod car down to the market, because the smell of smoking oil and turbo exhaust, it turns off the normies, right? You want the thing to be a nice, comfortable ride most of the time, even if you give up a little bit of potential performance. So one of the things that we did when even when we do have a chance to do multi-thread operations with the newer versions of ComicBase that are coming out imminently, is we do back off enough so that we're not impacting other things you're doing on your machine. We're not assuming that you have a jillion megabytes of RAM, so forth. So we're not being as performant as we in theory could be. So I guess maybe in the future there'll be a way that we can give you a dial so you can ramp up those things and smoke a little bit more performance out of it if you feel like you need it. Honestly, I think most of you aren't going to want to, because we've made things so fast, it doesn't matter. But anyway, a bigger problem, though, and honestly just as big of a problem, is little things. Where we're not taking on the big tasks like, hi, I need you to scour 5 million paths on the user's on a computer and see if there's a picture there. I don't need to do that, but just do one thing. Say, hi, I need you to look across 3.5 million database records and tell me all the ones that are different. That's actually a single person job. You can't easily multi-thread that particular problem, because you'd have to split up the set first, and splitting up the set to let some people check this part and some people check that part. I say people, they're really computer processing threads. The work of doing that actually would take longer than it would take just to have one person go and check them all, or one thread go and check them all. Well, the problem we've had before, though, is that the core elements between our database, the database that ComicBase uses a thing called SQLite. SQLite allows for what's called asynchronous operations, which means, hi, you go off and do that thing, get back to me, and when you get, in the meantime, I'll be sitting around here waiting, chatting with the user, clicking on button presses and doing the interface. Turns out when they did that work in SQLite, they kind of sort of did the work. It's probably, I'm sure it was as good as they knew how to do at the time, or as good as they could under the limitations. But it turns out the part where you sit there and the boss, the user interface thread, right, the part that you're clicking on, right, every button you click on, every window you're dragging around, that's the user interface thread. Because it's there to respond to you. You're the real boss, but that's the boss of the program, is the user interface thread. When you say, I want to download an update, and this is great. And you assign a flunky, a worker thread off there, go off and find the new things. That thing's supposed to say, great, I'm on it, and the user interface thread is supposed to be free to then respond to anything else you feel like doing. If you feel like dragging the window around, it's supposed to move the window. If you feel like clicking the stop button, it's supposed to click and highlight the stop button, and so forth. The problem is the process of handing off that work to the background flunky is not as seamless as you would like. It kind of, like I say, it half-asses it. It says, yeah, you go off and do that thing, and we're going to keep the line of communication open so much that if you were to try to move this window around a lot, or if you were to do much of anything for a couple seconds, you're probably going to get that not responding message again, because the underlying thread that holds the two together is not as detached as you would like it to be. Well, as a result, you guys have probably gotten the not responding messages from time to time, even when we're only having one worker do the work. And the good news is we've actually come up with a technique so that should probably never happen to you again. We basically, and this sounds retarded, but it basically comes down to, okay, we know that when you say go off and do the work to get this big list of records from the database, or update this big list of records, or things like that, even though we said it's a fire and forget it kind of deal, you aren't going to do it. You're like one of these needy new employees where you kind of need to keep on saying, I don't want to be out of sight of the manager, and you kind of want to keep that open. What we've basically done in those cases, the really heavy ones where we know that it's going to take a few seconds for this guy to come back with the answer or do the thing, we actually have got we've appointed a new manager where it's like basically say, we tell the manager, yeah, you tell that guy to go do it, right? Meanwhile, the manager, very competent manager, it's that third thread for these things. It frees the interface up to react instantly. And so as a result of putting these new manager calls in throughout the whole thing, a couple of things happen. Now, one, I'll give you the bad news right off the bat. It's ever so slightly slower. It's like if you time something that takes 39 minutes or 38 minutes and 48 seconds to finish, it now takes like an extra 15 seconds. And it's worth every single damn one of those seconds, because even though it takes the extra work of telling the manager, hey, you tell that guy to do it, and then the manager worries about the interface, it means that you, controlling the program, never get that, hey, this is not responding feeling. You never get that sinking feeling that, the program's not listening to me. It's my computer hosed. It's like your computer's always going to feel happy and alive and doing its thing now. Now, we're began rolling the process of putting these kind of manager calls out throughout the program, honestly, earlier today. We will be looking at them basically case-by-case basis. We know some of the big heavy parts in ComicBase, again, like downloading a content update, and there are times we say, like, what are all the changed issues? What are, out of the 1.3 million comic books, which are different? We know that that's a heavy call, in which case we're now replacing that one with a manager call. What are the, when we say, hey, update all the, add all the new issues, again, it's even if we've got the list here, I need you to write these 1.1 million new rows down to the database. That's something where, again, we're asking a manager to do that one. So we're getting 3 processes involved in that one to get it done, just to make sure that the interface never goes down on you. So that's something we started doing. It's so new. I don't suggest you download this very minute unless you just like living on the cutting edge. But if you do, then absolutely go to the interim channel and say download updates and knock yourself out. But we will be putting that out into the public probably just in the next couple of days. At which point it's going to be pretty cool, because a lot of these pain points that we had all the years of doing ComicBase kind of go away. It's suddenly everything becomes very fluid, very fire and forget, very responsive. And the core, because we're able to roll all these time-saving routines that we've been banging on about, because we've been able to, complete them end to end now, kind of, as they say, tie it together with a bow. You're going to see all the things that used to take a fair amount of time in ComicBase taking half or a quarter of the time that they used to. And there were never all that many things like that, but I'm really looking forward to the idea of making them even faster. Now, I'm running on a 4-year-old computer right now. This was bought, I guess, right after COVID, but and it hasn't been updated since. If you've got a much faster computer, it's possible, that some of these things are so fast already you don't even notice it. I have noticed there's a couple people in our testing group who have computers that are significantly slower for other reasons. And when you feel a routine that's taking you 3 and 4 hours and suddenly it takes 2 hours, that's a better thing. If we can make it take half an hour, that'll be better yet. So I am looking forward to doing that. Because speed is a good thing. I like speed a lot, and we hope to be sharing a lot of this with you. All right, so I've been yapping along for a really long period of time, so let's talk about this. All right, so let's see. Okay, wow, sorry, lab accident. Okay, so I get props for the shirt here, this Atomic Avenue shirts. I think it's one of the last ones. We got to get a new batch of those get done. Let's see here. Ed has been submitting the PDF files for Marvel Previews, DC Connect, and IDW monthly catalog, along with the cover images. Are the PDF files being added to the master list? They aren't. One thing that was a question for us, so when we started, just to give a little bit more context on this one, so when we started doing digital, here, let's go over to Fantastic Four here. All right, so you guys probably know that ComicBase has the ability to store your digital media files. So for instance, if you ever look over here and you see a little play button next to something, if you click on it, that means you've got media for that particular file. And so in my case, I bought, when they did it on CD back in the day, Marvel had a deal with, like, here's the first 400 issues of the Fantastic Four or whatever it was, and you could just buy them on CD and view them on their viewer, or we made it so that you can actually just drag them into ComicBase, and if so, then you can be viewing, sorry, it launched Adobe here, but you can actually go through and view the individual. Hang a second, I've got to log into my Adobe account. Sorry about that. If I can do this without my glasses, it's on the other screen, so you guys can't see it, I hope. Okay, and and it's the Adobe plan where I have to sign out my poor wife in order to be able to use my own software. All right, so so here's the first issue of Fantastic Four, Charles Atlas ads and all. So but yes, we have all this stuff built into ComicBase. We have the ability for you to drag your own PDFs, CBR, CBZ files, URLs, MP4 files, MP3s if you want to have audiobooks that you're keeping the whole thing, you name it, you can just drag the media in, and if it's named the same as the issue in question, you can actually go ahead and just immediately view that particular issue, and you're on your way. That's pretty cool. But when that happened, we had a question to ask ourselves, which is, well, some comic books have gone into the public domain. Oh darn, sorry about that, guys. I've been on the wrong thing this whole time. Apologize for that. Some comic books have been in the public domain. So do we want to start bundling together links to those comic books? Because you could go to all sorts of comic books from the 40s and 50s. In theory, we could just have the links be part of ComicBase, and you could have the PDF right there in the program. And between us and our legal team, we were basically told, yeah, public domain or not, you're not doing it. The reason was because you can... there's two ways to use software or intellectually protected work in the United States. One is what's called fair use, and the other one is that is definitively in the public domain. So Bill Willingham has actually, who is the creator of Fables, has actually said, I'm putting all the Fables in the public domain. DC Comics disagrees with him. Bill says, hey, I've got the contracts. I have the rights. I can put it in the public domain if I want. And DC Comics is still indicated, if you were to shove around public domain copies of Fables, that they would very likely sue you. So because we don't get paid for this sort of thing, we don't want to defend a million lawsuits. We've decided there's probably no upside for us here in bundling on stuff that is in public domain, probably in public domain, might be in public domain, etc. We don't know. And certainly fair use is the other way of being able to use something like that. The problem with fair use is you have to be able, there's no affirmative a fair use. In other words, there's nothing where like, oh, well, yes, clearly, it's this or a situation, so that is fair use. That is not a real thing. If someone says, well, I'm not getting paid for it, so it's fair use. No, that's not a real thing. If someone owns the rights to a piece of intellectual property and they feel for whatever reason that you're pissing them off by using it, they can sue you, and you have to defend what you think is fair use in court, which is insanely costly. So we decide, yeah, no, we're not going to be bundling or distributing or otherwise using the PDFs of anything people send us, because we certainly could, right? We certainly could make it so, along with the pictures, that we could, be bundling along PDFs as well, and just no. Thank you. We really appreciate it. It's a lovely idea, and no, we're not going to do it. Just because I can't afford the liability. It's not worth it. All it takes is one crazy person at Marvel's Legal to say, wait, you included the catalog images that we had in our free monthly distributor catalog for this date. We're going to sue you. No, there's a reason we spent, I think, up to 3.5 years was our worst one, getting signed permissions letters from all the people in there, even though what we're doing with the pictures is affirmative. We certainly think and believe it to be fair use, but more importantly, for everyone who was, in a position where they might want to, sue us, we made sure that we had their permissions in writing before we used anything. So, that's the story on that one. But anyway, that's the long version of your question. Apologize for taking so long for it, but that's hopefully that was interesting to someone. Department of Commerce says, I thought that the notes field was not supposed to be changed. We don't overwrite your notes field. If you choose to clean up your notes field, though, so if you say rebuild, recalculate issues, and do notes, then it will do the standard cleanups. And again, the standard cleanups, it's we're not trying to replace any of your stuff, but we are trying to do is make sure it's not redundant with itself. So you might have seen, so like by default, let's take an example of something. So we have Fantastic Four #1, which would be the first appearance of the Fantastic Four, first appearance of the Invisible Girl, first appearance of Human Torch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? If we were to say first appearance of that, and then one day someone goes and says, all right, I'm going to change mine so it says 1: Human Torch, 1: et cetera. Under the default rules of things, if we see that, it's going to say, okay, because notes stack, we add to notes, but we don't remove your notes. It would then say first appearance of Fantastic Four, 1: Fantastic Four, first appearance of Human Torch, 1: Human Torch. That doesn't help anybody. And so there are certain things where we did set official style. So if you choose to do a rebuild lists and you choose to let it recalculate your notes, it is going to take like the first appearance styling and look for redundant notes against official style. It is going to look for things like, did you have too many spaces after a semicolon? In which case, we're going to take your 2 spaces after the semicolon, make it 1 space. Dumb stuff like that. We're certainly not trying to remove any real data of the whole thing, but if it's absolutely redundant or badly formatted or things like that, then we're going to try to, as much as a program can blindly know, because the notes field ultimately is utterly in your hands. But as much as we can guess of the common typo types of things, we do try to fix that stuff up. So that's what's going on with that. Let's see here. PDF files. Started late. Okay, and apparently I'm great at 2 times speed. That's good to hear. All right. Bryce Root says the nut spine is getting better. That's good. And yes, by the way, if anyone who's in the testing group is testing on the whole thing and getting, especially of the areas that we've mentioned that we're working with, any kind of not responding, let us know, because it is highly arbitrary. Honestly, you having the worst possible computer on the planet or the slowest hard drive is actually gold for us right now, because, like I say, there is a slight penalty for us to assigning the middle manager to control the user interface thread, because it actually, I mean, if you're just working your life by the stopwatch, it does make it ever so slightly slower, that extra half a second, whatever the thing is. But if it feels responsive and it never freaks anyone out, that's worth the half a second, in general. But we don't want to do it every single time we ask the database to do anything. So sometimes you need to be able to say, hey, you pick up that coffee cup and hand it to me. The database equivalent of that, which is like, you write that one thing to that one place. You don't want to assign a manager to handle, oversee that kind of operation, because it's just stupid. It's like, can you do anything around here? Anyway, so we're not looking to change every call in the entire database. And at some point there's going to be some kind of threshold case. Like, we know the ones that are terrible. Like when you take 3.5 million newspapers and say, give me the list of different ones. That one definitely is going to be something that we're going to require a middleman in there to make sure that it stays responsive on a lot of people's computers. I find things on my computer, most of the time it never goes unresponsive, even on that. But other people have slower computers, slower hard drives, things like that. So as we're going through this one, if you would tell us the places where it said not responding for a second, let us know what that was, even if it was just for a second. And just let me know what was on the screen at the time, and we'll look at that one and we'll ramp it back as far as how much we apply this kind of middle manager kind of thing to the whole thing to keep it solid. I don't, I have a $280 demo machine, which most days I can show on screen. That's kind of like my baseline for what a respectable computer is in the day. Some of you guys have computers that are significantly slower than that one. So if you do, let us know, and we'll get into that one. And by the way, and here's the big commercial for the testing group. If you do like being on the bleeding edge of things, we very much would appreciate it if you want to join our internal group on this whole thing. We do something, this is crazy. I mean, we are the most transparent damn software company you have ever seen. We basically will invite our customers who are interested in this sort of thing to be part of our internal Slack group, so they can get early access to builds that are in development. They can comment on them the second they're produced and so forth. So if you want to be part of that kind of community, please, all you do is write me, so pbickford@human-computing.com, and say, hey, I'm interested in being part of the internal test group. And to the extent that you're interested and you stay up with the whole thing, yeah, we're happy to have you aboard, and and you get to try these things out before they hit anywhere else. And it's a really great way to shape the product as things go on, because we very much react to is like, people say, I found this confusing. I found this one odd. Or, hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way? We pay a lot of attention. Anyone will tell you, to the people, especially in the internal group, to all of our customers, but especially the people in the internal group who are giving us feedback on the whole thing. It's like, yeah, you're right. That'd be better if we did it this way. And that stuff, you can change things very quickly being part of that. So if you'd like to be part of it, I'll put the thing up on the, once again, pbickford@human-computing.com. Let us know, and we'll invite you to be part of that. Let me see what else is going on. Okay, so we talked about, PSAs, by the way. Yes. So please do not forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. And if you're watching post live stream, please leave comments. We love that sort of thing. ComicBase message boards are also open at forums.comicbase.com, and we have a dedicated thread on the ComicBase message boards, so you can request live stream topics, demos, etc., as well as checking out Andre's amazingly world famous ComicBase cover catalog. I can't wait for the next version of that one. It's going to be lit, because they'll have all the newsstand versions there as well. I think we're 1.1 million 50,000, something like that, pictures in the current one. It's insane. If you ever imagine what that looks like printed, you can see it there. So, let's see here. Yes, and just I'm back to the point now where I'm finally on screen and I get to say yes. There's the part where like I was off screen. I apologize for that. All right, let's see here. And oh yes, and psychic typing. So yeah, so the idea on that is that when you're typing, you're looking for, say, a creator name, say Mark Waid. If we know that Mark Waid is the most cited writer whose name begins with M, we literally can offer, as you're typing along and you're typing in a creator name, like let's say I meant to say Mark, I don't know, my, I'm now totally zoning out on like names of people whose name starts with M. Let's say you meant Mike Martz, right? But if you type an M, it has a list of probably at that point 1,000 creators whose name starts with M, but it's going to offer Mark Waid as the number one choice. Now, if I type MI, it's going to offer you probably Mike Wieringo or something like that is the most popular MI writer, and it's going to go back from there until you finally type Mike M or enough so that you can differentiate between the one you wanted and the next most popular. But by always suggesting the most popular guy first, we make it so that statistically you have to type less letters, and the second you see the one you want, you can just stop typing because you're there. So rebuilding this, the creator index and so forth, not only does it create that index to start with, but as it's going through it, it also counts the citations of everybody in your collection. And then it can say, okay, well, hey, I know that I want to, if you're a huge, Frank Miller guy, it could be that if you're typing letters, that F becomes the very the most likely guy for you for the citations of a writer or artist in your collection that starts with F. So anyway, it just makes everything work a little bit better when you go ahead and do that one. Let's see. Bob Leonard. Random question. I have a CGC signature series book that does not have a cover image. I have it in the case. Would you all want the image through the acrylic and with signatures? If we don't have a picture of it at all, sure. I mean, as long as we can, as long as you can see it through the glass, it's better than nothing. I mean, it goes back to the old Lord Satan joking rule. It's, again, guys, this is a joke. Just don't take it seriously. But no, it's just, I'll take a bad picture if I have no picture. I would take a better, bigger picture over the bad picture. But when we got nothing, we're begging, we're not choosing. And so, yes, if that's the only picture you've got of a comic book that is, anyone's got is something that's in a CGC case with a signature on it, yes, I will take that. So better that than nothing. Let's see here. Does psychic typing take into account the publication date of the book and offer you the first choice from the time period by popularity? No, it's just a count. Is what's behind the whole thing. It's not doing that. Although there are some interesting ideas around titles that we will explore later. We can talk in the internal chat on that one. I'll tell you more about that one. Okay, so guys, I think that does it for me. I got to get back to it because we're busy moving fast and breaking stuff on the inside here, and I got to get back to shattering some more stuff. So anyway, look forward to it. You will see an announcement. At some point, we're going to make this an official release. You'll probably see us make some news about this one in a bigger way when we're ready to have you guys play around with this one on a bigger scale. I do want to, again, work through a few issues that, like I say, some of the stuff is like it didn't exist 24 hours ago. So I definitely want to nail down some of it before we give it out to the world. But we think you're really going to dig it. This is just a new era for the program, and I'm just really, really happy about it. So I think you guys are going to be stoked to play around with it. So anyway, please check us out. And if you also are interested in becoming part of the internal group, please pbickford@human-computing.com. Send me an email, and we'll let you in more, and you can see how the sausage gets made. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again. Thank you to our mods. Thank you everyone who commented, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.